Good morning, good members and friends. This is a little different twist on some of the videos we've shot and the information we provided over this COVID-19 period. Today, I've got a special friend and guest who has been an associate of ours for more than 3 years. Kevin Erasmus is a legal advocate, qualified in health and safety. He's chosen not to do his fights in the courtroom, but to share his knowledge with many of us on estates and in the industry where we look after our communities. Our relationship began, as I said, with strictly health and safety. To see here that we here at St. Francis Links were abiding by the rules, taking the lead where we can in providing the proper protocols to ensure your safety and the safety of those who come in our gate from the time they arrive to the time they leave. Kevin is online with me now from Plettenberg Bay, where he lives in offices. And a little side note, we share the same birthday. That's not all bad. So welcome, Kevin, many years younger than me, but welcome. And I look forward to you sharing maybe more of a legal side to this than just what we read. But I'd like to start by saying, legally, what does this mean for St. Francis Links? What steps are we taking that you provided with us to make this work?
Jeff, thank you so much for that warm and friendly introduction. It has been a true honor to work with St. Francis Links for the last 3 years. In terms of our legal duty and legally, what does this COVID-19 mean? Yes, the COVID-19 virus, although in a global perspective being a pandemic, also has another problematic factor that we have to take into consideration. That problematic factor would be the legal liability exposure that comes with this COVID-19 virus. Remember, the only difference between the COVID-19 virus and all other workplace hazards and risks would be the likelihood and the severity thereof. In its core and within the legislation, it remains the same thing, and that it is something that poses a threat to the health and well-being of our employees and to other role players within the estate. So in terms of our legal duty, there's a couple of things we had to look at. The hazardous biological agent regulations and the notices and the directives brought out within the relevant gazettes clearly make provision for the proper management and mitigation of the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We took each and every one of those requirements into consideration, and this has led us to the establishment of a COVID-19 committee. Within this committee, we had to determine which legislation applies and what parts of legislation we would use to ensure the proper mitigation of the spread or the exposure of this hazardous biological agent regulation. We had to develop the legally required risk assessments. We rated all exposure areas based on their likelihood, and then developed and implemented the legally required mitigation procedures and protocols. Some of these protocols include everyday screening, the provision of the legally required personal protective equipment, like PPE, as we all know it, and the constant training and monitoring of compliance by all employees and role players entering the estate. All those protocols and procedures were comprehensively described within the complete St. Francis Links COVID-19 management plan. Yes, so and that in the end is to ensure that we as an estate complies with our legal duties in terms of this COVID-19 virus.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And as we move forward, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful that instead of just walking from 6 to 9, we're going to be playing from 9 to 6. And that means that we've had to do additional things that you've already discussed. Are we ready? Are you comfortable that the steps we've taken here at St. Francis Links will provide the safety that we're looking for?
Jeff, we can surely say that we have left no stone unturned within our COVID-19 risk assessments and procedures. Remember, the benchmark we have set for COVID-19 compliance within St. Francis Links has a level far higher than the status quo of the Act. You know, the Act and the regulations were not something we worked towards, but rather something we have tried to work from, meaning it was seen as a bare minimum, and therefore we decided to implement more than that which is actually legally required. So on your question, yes, we are ready. And as long as all our role players within the estate plays their part as well.
Kevin, you've really made us feel a lot better about where we are. As you can see, we do take this very seriously as you do. And we're pleased to have you. Now, for the sake of our members, they read so much, they hear so much. Don't touch this, have the mask on, have the mask off, wash your hands, spray your hands. What are some things that you've seen along the way through this COVID that you think may be more important than others for our members to consider in their own home? And maybe when they're welcoming family or friends or even service providers, what are the steps they should be taking as well?
That's a very good question, Jeff. Besides from the very, very important general rules, such as wearing a mask, coughing or sneezing in a tissue or into your inner arm, regularly washing your hands and keeping a social distance, I would like to urge all our role players within the estate to consider doing the following as well. Sanitize your hands before and after the use of any biometric system. Do not touch any surface or object unless it is absolutely necessary, and wash your hands thereafter. Do not touch any part of your face unless your hands have been washed for at least 20 seconds. If you've been to town or a public place, prior to entering your home, take off your shoes and any part of your clothing that might be contaminated. This will prevent the virus from entering your home. I usually do this, and I also take a shower every time I return from a public place. Make sure that those shoes and the clothes are properly washed or disinfected before you use them again. As a last thought, I've been constantly being informed or notified about the fact that this virus could be on literally everything, and it's a dead virus, and it only becomes alive once we put it into our bodies. So if we can go throughout everything that we do with those thoughts, we can implement strategies to prevent that from or any person from being contaminated with the virus.
All right. Kevin, this has been very good for me, as it is every time we speak to each other. I'm learning from you, and I have a feeling that there may be questions we haven't touched on, and obviously some of you out there would really like to know more, and it might be something specific to something you're living with right now or dealing with. Why don't you contact me, or better yet, why don't you contact Kevin?